Welcome everyone to our interview today, our online event, Counselling Suicidal Clients with Andrew Reeves. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, John. Thanks for inviting me on.
Well, it's great to have you here, and also a warm welcome to everyone who is joining us on the internet. Great to have you all here, and I can see there's already lots going on in the chat room, so it's great to.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, welcome, Kafka. Thank you.
So, Andrew, you can see the chat room too, and we're really hoping for lots of interaction, questions and comments. Saz is in the chat room as our chat room facilitator.
Okay.
So, if anyone is struggling to get in, Saz will pop up her email. If you just click on that email address, send her a message, she can help you get in. So, great. Well, Andrew, to begin our interview, maybe I could ask you to give us a sense of where you're located geographically.
Okay. Other than in the rain, I'm located in northwest England. I'm in Cheshire, and it is still hammering down and has been since about 8 o'clock last night. So I shall be swimming somewhere else fairly soon.
You might need a canoe or something down
Yeah, I know.
there.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, the weather's not been kind to you at all, I guess.
No, it's been terrible, but there you go. I suppose we need the rain as long as it soaks in and does what it's meant to do.
Mm, yeah. Well, thanks for giving us an idea of your geography. Could I also ask you, what's been your professional journey up to here, Andrew?
Okay. Interesting. I was thinking about this the other day for a different reason, and it occurred to me that I became a therapist because of lots of things that I realised I didn't want to do. Um, so I left school and started a degree in psychology because at the time I thought that that's what psychotherapy was, but it wasn't. And I remember sitting in a lab doing an experiment on turn alternation in woodlice and thinking I really, really didn't want to be doing this. So interestingly, I became unwell. I developed glandular fever, which knocked me out for about, well, 18 months, 2 years. I was really poorly with it. Took an opportunity to leave my course and went and worked with old people with severe and enduring mental health problems as a care assistant. Um, Realised that the standard of care wasn't very good, but as a care assistant, I couldn't do much to influence it. So I went and trained as a social worker and got into social work, worked in child protection, adult mental health, and realised that I was spending most of my time being a social police officer, sectioning people and taking people's children away, which I didn't want to do either. It came at a time of community care, purchaser provider split, for those of you who remember that. Realised I wanted to be a provider of care, not a purchaser of it. And so started my counselling training in the late 80s and found as soon as I started that's all along what I wanted to do. So I worked for many years in an adult secondary care mental health service, and then in a 24-hour mental health crisis team before moving on to higher education. So I work at the University of Liverpool now, but I work as a counsellor and supervisor there, so I see staff and students. So it feels a journey to this point, having done lots of things that I didn't want to do, but it's all sort of moved me in the direction of actually doing something that I really, really wanted to do and still enjoy doing now.
Yeah, that's quite a journey you've had, Andrew. And
Uh,
yeah,
yeah.
amazing to think about the things you hadn't wanted to do and not enjoyed, but you've arrived here.
It's interesting how we find our way sometimes in spite of ourselves. Perhaps not. You like to think that we do these things because they're a planned thing to do, but then you find you get there in the end anyway.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. And here you are, I guess, having done lots of work around, well, the theme of the interview, counselling suicidal clients. I guess you have delivered lots of workshops, you've written a book, and um, I mean, you would give me a sense of just how many people you delivered those workshops to.
Yeah, I've been doing the workshops. I started developing the workshop as part of my research, and I delivered that to about 500 therapists around the country in different settings. And then sort of like it's gone on from there. And for me, the research into suicide, whilst it was all very nice to get a piece of paper, wasn't really about the piece of paper. It was, in some ways, a healing process for me following bereavement through suicide of three of my clients. And, it's just something that I get so much energy from. So probably as an estimate, in the last few years, I've probably delivered it to around about 7,000 counsellors around the country in different settings, and psychologists and social workers and nurses and teachers. And for me, it's just something that I think I said to you before, John, that every time I deliver it, something new comes out of it. So there's always learning. People have always got something to say which makes you think and makes you challenge what you assumed.
Yeah, so even after working with all those thousands of people in the workshops, they're still learning for you. It's incredible.
Every time. I just did a workshop 2 weeks ago, and somebody was talking about their own experience of working with suicide, because I start the workshops by saying, I'm not there as expert. I bring perspectives and ideas, but the learning is in the group. And somebody was talking about their experience, which is probably not right to go into now, but it just made me think of so many other things that I've never really thought before. So, in all training, there should be something that we learn all the time. But certainly in working with suicide, it's such a dynamic, shifting, changing field that we can always take away something that's poignant or different.
Yeah, that sounds like really powerful work and fruitful for you, I guess. Yeah. Well, there's a question about your workshop. So,
Okay.
can you get us through what is the content you cover in the workshop? What kind of
Yeah.
things are you doing in there?
Yeah. Okay. So very, very briefly, when I piloted the workshops, I did the workshops, got feedback, and then I went back to all these counsellors 6 months later and was basically asking, what do you remember? What was relevant to your practice? What didn't work for you? And so I've developed the workshop from their feedback and continue to do so. So the sort of things that we cover. I'm a firm believer that as therapists, what sits right at the centre of our work with suicidal clients is ourselves and our own feelings and responses and experiences of suicidality. And so we spend quite a bit of time looking at our own responses and how they shape and inform what we do with clients. I don't believe we can leave them at the door. That expression that we leave ourselves at the door. I don't believe that's possible. I do think that we need to pay careful attention to our responses around suicide. We then look at the dangers of not doing that. So, in some ways we can call it the dangers of unacknowledged countertransference. But without getting hung upon the terminology, what happens if we don't pay attention to ourselves fundamentally, and how we can act that out with our clients. And then we look at how clients talk about suicide, ways in which they present their suicidal thoughts and feelings. And I base that on my own research and transcripts and assessment interviews that were undertaken with suicidal clients. And how counsellors and psychotherapists respond to that, and what the implications of that are about talking. Briefly, we look at the issues of working in a therapeutic context, what influence the organisation has on what we do, whether that be independent practice or in a healthcare setting or in a third sector setting. We look at the research around risk, so risk factors, risk tools, assessment tools. I have to say that my position is, and I'm happy for people to disagree with this, my position is that while I think risk assessment tools have a place, generally I don't see them as particularly valuable. And I think talking to people about their feelings is much more beneficial than ticking a box. And then we spend quite a bit of time in depth looking at a case scenario and how we as therapists would respond to this person. And we use a video case scenario for that. And then we look at how do we support ourselves in the event of client suicide? The people will kill themselves, and people we know will kill themselves. And so what can we do for ourselves individually, and what can we do in a team setting?
Wow, that's a lot to fit into a workshop, but
It is.
sounds great. Yes,
It's a
yeah.
busy workshop, but there's a lot to do, and
Mm,
but I mean, people come along quite anxious about it because it's about suicide, and I try to make the workshops as accessible as possible. In that we don't learn if we're feeling defended all the time. So we try and use some appropriate humour and make the sessions quite light, and create an environment where we can talk about ourselves as much as we want to.
mm,
I don't. I don't deliver a modality specific training. I mean, myself, I'm an integrative practitioner. Probably at my heart is person centered, but I've had training in psychodynamic and some training in CBT. But my own view is that I don't particularly want to push a particular model. I think it's much more important that people integrate what's relevant for them. I noticed one of the questions was about how is it different from things like the assist training.